Hey, yo, welcome to the Smash Pod, brought to you by SmashUp Fantasy Sports, the only next-gen fantasy football game that lets you choose your players, choose your Smash cards, and dominate your opponents. And now, the only next-gen fantasy sports game that has a single-player mode, which we are excited to talk about today. I am your host, Chef, as always, and I am with my guy, Hawk. We are really excited for this special edition of the Smash Pod because we're going to be talking about the very first single player fantasy football game that we just launched yesterday. So we want to tell you all more about it. We're going to walk you through the first lineup build in that single player mode. We're going to see who we're up against. We're going to talk about these bosses that we're going to be trying to defeat week over week, and then what that means after you do that. We're going to jump all into that. But Hawk, before we do that, how's it going? What's up, man? You excited to talk through this today?
Yeah, I am excited. I mean, normally when I'm talking about playing a single player game,
Bro,
I mean, Mike is out of
we don't want to know
town.
about your single player game, all right? So let's not go there.
It has a joystick. I'm very 1980s, right? I'm talking about Atari. You don't play Atari at home sometimes?
Right.
Bust out
Little
the...
Pong.
Nope.
Anyway, Hawk, let's dive into it, man. Why don't you just tell us how this single player actually works? And then let's look at this week's boss, and then let's dive into my first single player lineup.
Yeah, so listen, I'm super excited about this. This is the first single player fantasy game in the history of fantasy. And really, I mean, it's a hybrid of traditional head-to-head fantasy football and those like tournament-style video games like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Mike Tyson's Punchout. So the way it works is it's like a story, right? You're a brand new head coach just starting out. And your goal is to defeat 6 increasingly difficult video game bosses, or here, head coaches, in head-to-head fantasy matchups. So, okay, how do they get more difficult, you might ask? Well, obviously, you set your lineup, you set your smash cards. So do the head coaches, but they also have unique playing styles. And for each of them has an exclusive smash card that they use, doesn't even come out of their smash card budget, that kind of buffs their team and makes them increasingly difficult. Now, you as a player also get an advantage. Every single week you play, win or lose, you unlock an extra $500 for your smash card budget. So as you're playing these harder and harder head coaches, you're also leveling up and getting tough for yourself. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be hard to beat all 6, but you beat all 6 before the end of the regular season. That's how you beat the game. And if you do, you punch your ticket to the postseason tournament of champions. It's going to have $10,000 in cash prizes. And like all of our games, it's totally free to play, right? No entry fees, no pay to win mechanics, no microtransactions. So just the pure joy of fantasy football, the pure joy of that kind of tournament style video game, and your chance to really prove you're a fantasy champion, whether or not you're doing that with your home league teams.
All right. I love that. I love that it sounds like it's very similar to real life football. You're playing against these other bosses that have their own stylistic differences, and like regular football, in the sense that you play different teams with different levels of difficulty and you have to apply different strategies to try to beat them. But then your own team, as you advance, it sounds like you get stronger with that additional budget, right? You can use that budget that increases week over week to strengthen your own team. Just like a lot of teams, they get healthier, they get stronger, they develop more of a strategic scheme. But this is in fantasy football, which is like never been done. So that sounds super cool. So I'm excited to jump into it. Should we play?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's try to see if we can beat this first boss.
All right. So I am going to share my screen here and we're going to walk through this. So we're going to talk through this for those that are listening. Obviously, for those that are watching along, you can see on screen. So we are at the SmashUp home screen and we're going to select campaign mode. So view campaign here.
So exciting to see that unlocked. It's been locked all season, right? Like you haven't been able to click
grayed
on
out.
it, so.
You finally can click on that. So Road to Glory, and I'm not a member. So let's join the campaign. All right, so there we are. We see it. We're at the first boss here. His name is Newbie. Who's that look like? What coach does that look like to you? Anyone in particular? Nolan. He reminds me of Nolan. Does it look like Mike Nolan a little bit?
Oh, I can see that. So this is like a throwback. It's like an old school Mike Nolan.
Yeah, it could be. But his name is Newbie, so he's not that strong, right? For newbies, does he have any power-ups?
No, this is the only one with none. You're like on par with this guy. This is like a warm-up, your chance to beat up on someone the same as you before they start to ramp up.
All right, Newbie's talking to me a little bit. He says, hey, take it easy on me, would you? I need this job. All right, we need to put Newbie to rest. We need to put him out of his misery. Let's beat him so he doesn't find another job in the fantasy landscape. Let's click on new lineup and let's set our lineup. All right.
This is
So
just a fancy. You're just trying to make him 0-1. At least I am. Meanwhile, you're trying to like put him out of his misery. This is like it's kind of like he's
it's
a
old
horse to
Yeller
go
here.
shoot in the backyard.
Let's
Yeah,
turn them
yeah.
into some glue, baby. Turn them into some glue. All right. So I'm going to set my lineup. Set my lineup for this week. So I'm playing against Newbie this week, right? So I'm going to start
I think you
with
found your new catchphrase. By the way, I'm just gonna say that. Turn them into glue, baby. It's the new
turn them into
Smash
glue,
God.
baby. All right. This is going to be, you know what? Let's roll with the lineup that I stand behind, which are my smash starts for this week. So let's try to build off that. So let's go with Drake May off of his big debut last week. I'm scrolling down because I think he's cheap, right? 5,300. Let's go with him.
No Drake's a couple years ago. Now you could legitimately make an all like a well, not an all Drake team, but you could put 2 Drakes on your team, legitimately.
My Drake team, right? Okay, let's go Drake May. And one of your smash starts, I like to do the stack. Let's go Pop Douglas, Demario Douglas. I know he was cheap. I think it was like 4,900. So let's stack. Yeah, let's stack Demario and Drake versus that super porous Jacksonville D. All right, so I've started off pretty cheap here. So we got some money in the bank here. I also like Deontay Johnson. He was one of my smash starts. Deontay was relatively cheap as well. Kind of a mid-value pick. 6,600 here, playing against a very bad Washington D. That's going to be a shootout. A lot of points, I expect. Any thoughts on Deontay?
I love the pick. I mean, I'll be interested to see if you put where you put your smash cards, but really good value pick, and you've left yourself a lot of money to spend on other players.
Okay, yeah. So we're doing well from a budget perspective. Maybe we should go with some value here. I know you like Kyron. I like Kyron. Should we just roll with Kyron?
I mean, yeah, Raiders defense is porous. Kyron could just feast.
Yeah, exactly. Another tidbit, Kyron Williams has scored a touchdown in 8 games in a row. So I expect him fully to score again. And if Cooper Kupp comes back this week, I know it's a little bit in question. That offense could have an arrow up going forward, and that could put Kyron in position to score even more. So Rams have an arrow up on their offense.
Do we think the cocaine hitman is coming back this week? Is that the news?
It's Cooper Kupp, the cocaine hitman. I don't know. Well, you're still going to have to explain that one to me. I mean, there's definitely some other cocaine hitmen out there. So we'll have to figure that one out. All right. So we got Drake May, Kyron Williams, Demario Douglas, Deontay Johnson. Let's see who else we got here.
It's the way to listen to all the podcasts because people who did not listen to the last podcast are like, what the heck is a cocaine hitman? But it makes sense. You have the context.
Let's see. Brian Robinson Jr. So let's go with that. Against Carolina. Carolina's giving up the most rushing yards and touchdowns, I believe, in the NFL. So that is a strong play for B-Rob. Doing okay for
I will say
our lineup.
These are all your picks. I will say I did say Kyron was going to Galatians halfbacks. A couple other ones I looked up. If you're considering using that card this week, you've got Kyron. Brian Robinson was one. Bijan, I think, is a good play if you've got a little more cash. And if not, Chuba against the Washington defense. You could take both those running backs. It might be 2 big running back games.
Okay, so let's see. Bijan, how much was he? How much was Bijan? Bijan, 7,100. Chuba, 65. And then there's always Derrick Henry sitting out there. Always sitting out there. And another potential shootout. We've gone pretty cheap. And if we're considering hellacious halfbacks, we definitely want to stack that running back position. Let's go Derrick Henry. Ooh, that's a big part of our budget there. All of a sudden, we've got 10,700. We might go. Luckily, we've got kicker and defense left. Let's see. Yeah. I love to make sure we play a good defense. Let's look at defenses now. Let's see. I like to consider the matchups. I like teams playing against Deshaun Watson because that's just insta-sack, and that offense isn't doing anything. So to me, Cincinnati doesn't have a great defense, but they're playing Cleveland.
The only weird thing with going against Cleveland, though, because I've done it, Watson has not really turned the ball over. He's so inaccurate. Like, nobody can catch his passes. They just don't put up a lot of points, but he's not as juicy as he might seem compared to like some of the other really terrible quarterbacks that like throw like 3-4 picks.
I also like the Rams defense against Las Vegas. I mean, Las Vegas is they're just a bare bones team at this point. Let's try them out. I haven't really played a ton of defense against the Raiders this year, but they just lost Devontae. They're changing their quarterbacks out. Their run game is whack. Like, let's do it. Let's roll the dice, as the card says. But let's play the Rams defense against LV. And I like the price. It's not that expensive. It's not the cheapest, but $3,000, I think we can afford. All right.
What happens when a newbie meets a smash god?
That we turn them into glue. All right. So we got tight end and kicker left. Let's see what we're looking at. Tight end. We've got 7,700 left. Let's see. For kickers, we probably have to save around at most 2,700. So we could spend like up to $5,000, if not more.
Yeah.
Should we go with Brock Bowers? We just talked about that in our Smash. What's that?
Yeah, if we can afford him, I mean, that's a great pick for you.
Let's see what that does to our budget. All right, that only leaves us 1,900. Maybe we can't get a kicker. Yeah, it looks like we can't afford. Brock is a little too pricey. So let's go back to the drawing board for tight ends. And let's see. I liked Pitts. I did pick Pitts. Ride or die with Pitts this week. What do you think?
I mean, you might die with Pitts, but I'm happy to see it. I will not happy to see it.
Hey, let's put our money where our mouth is, or my mouth. All right, I'm going with Pitts. That leaves us a ton of money. Okay, well, maybe is there a better option than Pitts? We could have went with Kraft, Laporta. Laporta has been so disappointing, but I'm always waiting for that breakout game. McBride.
Ingram out there
against New England.
McBride.
I do like the sound of Ingram more than Pitts. Okay, let's see what happens from a budget perspective. If we get Ingram, can we afford a kicker? 2,800. I think we can. We can afford whatever damn kicker we want. I like Siebert. He's been really good this year. He scored in double digits almost every game. Any other kickers that you like out there?
I mean,
Butker.
A lot of weeks I will say either Young Ho or Kai have been two I've leaned on.
Young Wei. Don't talk about him that way. Don't call him a Young Ho. It's Young Wei.
You know what's funny? Just years I think fantasy football against you. I know your team names. We will not share them here. I think the listeners can probably guess.
Okay. It's interesting because Siebert, Carolina, Washington, that's supposed to be a shootout. Seattle, Atlanta has the second highest implied total. Let's go with Young Wei. He's probably good for a big boot or two. All right, so that's our lineup. We left 300 in the bank. I don't think that's going to come back to bite us.
Big booty. You talking about Young Ho? The big booty?
I said big boot. I said big boot. Big boot or two. He's ready to toot and boot it. All right. I like our projected point total, 96 before any cards being applied. All right, so let's talk cards. So with Drake May, I think he could be a Mr. Relevant play. I think I've got to hit one of these at some point. So we're going to go Mr. Relevant on Drake May, or at least start off with that. We can always revisit and go back. Demario Douglas, who'd you like on? What card did you like on Demario Douglas?
If I was going to put something on him, I think the not so wide receivers want to go cheap. He could get a lot of yards, but there's a good chance New England doesn't see the end zone, even though I know he scored last week.
Okay. Let's also look at hellacious halfbacks. We were considering that, right? So that is going to
be a good running back.
5 on our running backs. Ooh, looks like it's going to give us 22 points. Not bad. And we like all our plays. We put a lot of money into it. So we could do that. That would leave us only 3,000 left. Let's see. I like the defense. Do we like the Rams to beat the Raiders?
I think there's a good chance they beat the Raiders.
I do too. I think that's a pretty good matchup. We could do Sacks in the City or Takeaway Car. That offense is kind of inept, but I like.
How much you want to gamble at? I feel like defense wins championships is almost a guarantee here. Like almost a guaranteed 15. Nothing certain.
Yeah.
Takeaway Car could be worth more. But yeah.
Yeah, even in a loss. Let's go with defense wins championships. I like the 15 points being bankable on if I think the team that I'm applying to is going to win the game or not, and I think they should beat the Raiders. So that uses the entire budget, but I do want to go back to Drake May a little bit. Let's see. That card that I put on is Mr. Relevant here. Maybe let's
the only thing, and this is a weakness of our projection system we know, is we don't have like some probability weighted projection. So those all or nothing cards will tend to show as 0. We're hoping to fix that in the future, but it can make it a little bit misleading because there's probably some expected value there.
Let's see what happens if I go projectile dysfunction. I expect May to put up points, but I don't know how efficient he'll be. Let's see what that does. That gives us a projection of 11.5 card points, just to get an idea. And the other option is maybe Goldfish Memory. He did have 3 turnovers last game.
I wrote them on that last week. One of the combos I love doing is a bad quarterback with Goldfish Memory, or at least turnover prone. I mean, Drake is fine for rookie. And then the opposing defense with takeaway car, because then you double up, particularly for a weekly tournament. Obviously, other games, there's some different strategies.
You know what, man? Let's go big or go home. I wanted to play Mr. Relevant. The Jacksonville Jaguars are giving a lot of rushing yards to QBs. They're also giving up a ton of passing yards. That's a recipe for Mr. Relevant. So let's stick with it. So I'm going to go back to Mr. Relevant, put that on Drake May. All right, we got our lineup. We got Drake May, Kyron Williams, Brian Robinson Jr., Demario Douglas for the stack with Drake May, Deontay Johnson, Evan Ingram, Derrick Henry, Young Wei Koo, and the Rams defense against the Raiders. We've stacked hellacious halfbacks on our backfield, which I think is really strong with Kyron, Brian Robinson Jr., Derrick Henry. We put Mr. Relevant on Drake May, banking on that passing and rushing upside. And then defense wins championships on the Rams because I think they're going to beat the Raiders this week. What do you think? What's your feedback?
I like it. I love the guts too, man. I love that you go with your gut. I love you're taking a little bit of a risk, Mr. Relevant. That's why we call you Smash God, not like Safety God, Turtle God, Scared God. Like this is a
Safety
vengeful mighty God.
All right. You know what? And like thinking about your opponents, you've probably got to factor that into too. Like, do you need to risk it for the biscuit a little bit more? Do you need to go for the huge upside to beat a really challenging boss? Newbie sounds like he should be beatable. I think we mixed in a little bit of stability with the halfbacks all being upgraded by 1.75 across our 3 running backs that we have at play. So I want to mix in a little bit of upside with the Mr. Relevant. And of course, the defense wins championships. That's a pretty stable card. Got a 50-50 shot, obviously. More than that in this case if you're playing against the Raiders. But I like those extra 15 points there. So I feel good about this lineup. The projection is 118, essentially, not factoring in the Mr. Relevant because it's not based off of the actual projections that we can see from the passing and the rushing. But I feel like I'm going to outscore this 118 projection. So that's my single player lineup, man. So what next? What happens now?
Now we wait for the games. You can get, again, this is head to head. So there's actually going to be a matchup screen. You'll be able to see how you're performing against Newbie. And if you look, just like those Street Fighter games, right? If you beat him, you advance, you go on to the second boss. There's a mystery still. Got to unlock him. If you lose, then, next week we'll be right back here. We'll have to follow your progress every week here, Ming. Maybe we can come back, watch you set a lineup, and hopefully if you lose, you're back here playing Newbie next week. If you win, which I think you got a good shot to do, you're going to be on to the second boss. We'll have to see follow along with your adventure here.
Man, if I lose to Newbie, that would not be very good. I should be able to beat Newbie.
I'm not saying you need to win every week, but I do think if we make this a regular segment following your journey, if you make progress, win, 50, 60% of the weeks, it's going to be really fun. If you lose to Newbie 6 weeks in a row, this is going to lose a lot of steam. It's week 7, Ming plays Newbie.
I'll just be so annoyed by week 7 that I can't get past Newbie. Hopefully that does not happen. I'm down. Let's do this every week and see how far I can go.
I like it. I got faith in you. I think you got a good chance to win. You are a young ho.
I'm a young way, and I'm going to be on my road to glory. And then let's see if I can beat the final boss, the mystery boss at the end. So, all right. Well, sounds like we're going to do this every week. We're going to follow along on my journey on the road to glory, see if I can beat each of these bosses along the way. You guys who are listening can follow along on this journey and root for me or root against me, or I don't know, tell me who I should have picked or give me suggestions on the next week after a loss. But this sounds fun. Let's do this each week. I'm super excited about single player, man. This is really cool. This is the first of its kind, like we talked about. And it'll be really interesting to see what the feedback is from the community. Do they enjoy this? This is a really cool supplement and complement to, our public tourneys and the league play and obviously the standard fantasy everyone else plays. So I'm excited for everyone to try.
I'm excited. It's going to be an adventure.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. We wanted to introduce single player to you guys. Wanted to walk you through some lineup building, walk you through how to play, and we're going to continue to follow along and see what this adventure is like. Hopefully you guys all do the same. For Hawk, I'm Chef. Thank you so much for listening along, and we'll see you next time. Hawk, why don't you let everyone know how they can continue to follow along and play single player for the first time?
Absolutely. And follow us whatever software you're listening to keep hearing these other podcasts. You go to smashupsports.com and register. Get in the single player game. From there, make sure you go to social media as well. Take a look at Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. Follow along at SmashUp Sports. Get some good tips, see some data, learn some things to help you win and qualify for that tournament of champions. Again, $10,000 in cash prizes, so worth getting into. Otherwise, I think that's all we have for today.
That's right, baby. All right. See you next time, y'all. It's going to be Drake May.
Turn them into glue. We're making glue.
Turn them into glue.